So my topic, of course, is managing your outsourcing partners to meet mutually agreed upon goals. As a disclaimer, I am now the former CEO of Kibow Biotech, having just stepped down a couple of weeks ago. I am a pharmaceutical and biotech industry executive for over 45 years with blue chip companies such as Johnson & Johnson, American Home Products, later known as Wyeth, later still known as Pfizer. I also have CRO and CSO experience as a former Senior VP of Business Development across North America for a division of Quintiles. All the views expressed here are mine and not necessarily those of Kibow Biotech or any of my former employers. So here's the goal, okay, to meet the mutually agreed upon goals with your outsourced partners, specifically as CROs. These helpful hints, I hope, are applicable anytime, but especially now in light of the COVID-19 virus. So one of my favorite television stars is Captain Obvious. And I'd like to thank him for words of wisdom. Our goal, of course, is to finish our trials on time, on budget, with a high level of quality. And the answer is more than rhetorical. Why would we need to do this? Well, everybody on this call knows that the speed at which the sponsor can bring a product to market is the difference between success and failure in our industry. So I'm going to take the perspective of a sponsor, even though my client side experience is about the same as my pharmaceutical and biotech experience over the years. For this quick presentation, I'm taking the perspective of a sponsor. And there's a few assumptions. If you're starting a trial, let me assume that you've already got the following things done. They include the study planning, the site selection, the site qualification, local EC and IRB submissions, US and Ministry of Health submissions, import process, are they set up, supplies importation process, the site regulatory packaging approval, and clinical supplies being sent to the site. So moving on, just a couple quick agreed upon key performance indicators when you're managing your CRO and timelines. Okay, we want to establish key performance indicators that are measurable. Okay, timelines have to be adhered to throughout the trial. The site selection process and staffing. Is the CRO staffing appropriate for your study and in place as we start? The patient recruitment process, starting at the initial inclusion-exclusion criteria. How well-oiled a machine is that CRO's patient recruitment process? And I can't stress enough the importance to maintain data quality and integrity. And noting there's new technologies being implemented across the world, you as the sponsor need to understand the regulatory challenges to ensure proper compliance relative to maintaining data. So a few more tips. The basics include, please read and understand the agreement. The CRO selected most certainly has an agreement with you, the sponsor. Read it, understand it. This is, if done properly, your roadmap to success. Read that these arrangements are the basics of a good business relationship. And this is true even if the CRO you're working with for your trial is well known, with even a previous history of success. I urge you to be vigilant. Constantly review their progress against those standards, those KPIs that have already been set, so you can achieve the goals that you're looking for to achieve. The relationship can be warm and friendly, but that is not an excuse for missing deadlines and other agreed upon goals. I am certainly not recommending or advocating a hostile relationship. However, I am suggesting that you be vigilant. Demand too the A team that pitched you for your business. is the same team you'll be working with throughout the trial. There's a lot of bait and switch that I've experienced in my years when working with some CROs. Continuing with the tips, know that things will go sideways. You'll notice I said will and not if. You just don't know what it'll be nor when. So what you need to do is have a detailed mitigation committee and a crisis management standard operating procedures in place even before the trial starts. Recall that contingent strategy is also critical to success. Know, and really know, the PIs and the clinical coordinators. And of course, that will require frequent site visits. And in a day of, even in this day of COVID-19, when this issue is behind us, personal visits are always great. They're better than this virtual one, just to be blunt. Know too that it's an old salesman manager's adage. People will respect what you inspect. If you're there at the site, or if you have frequent teleconferences with them, ask the right questions, inspect all the different things against your KPIs. They'll begin to respect that and know the importance of what they're doing. Evaluate that CRO on their study management and the site management. Next is the data management. Is it ISO certified quality management system? Monitor the CRO staff turnover. I can't tell you how many times we've been burnt with high staff turnover, and it's resulting in having to train and then retrain people to participate in our trials. This could be on our Achilles heel. Okay, here are just a few items of what you don't want to do in managing your trial. Okay, do not assign a junior person at your company to oversee the study, even if you're a small biotech company. Okay, don't have the new kid on the block and try to test him or her and break them in as the primary contact to oversee your progress. It is strongly recommended that you assign a senior person to oversee your trial. A scientist is best, and another senior executive, perhaps one of you on the phone, is the primary contact, or should be the primary contact on the sponsor side, and have an equally high-level person on the CRO side. And especially for multinational trials, having these people available, these primary contacts available 24/7 throughout the trial. Do not let your costs get out of control. I don't need to tell those of you who are with small pharma companies, but one way to manage costs is to demand that all out-of-spec tasks are agreed upon in advance and documented as change orders with estimated incremental cost. This way you can manage your costs. And don't ignore the penalty clause in the agreement. Most sophisticated agreements with CROs will have penalty clauses, a fine, if you wish, or a reduction in costs if they don't meet certain criteria. You should know what those are should your CRO fail in certain key performance indicators. Other important considerations, and this is especially true for the multinational trials, regulatory authorities. These emerging regions of the world have begun to develop and change their existing clinical trial legislation and requirements. Mostly, this has been done to ensure patient safety. Know what those regulations are. Clinical trial logistics, it's an important requirement, and regulations need to be known regarding the collection and management of biological samples. They differ widely across the world. Legal aspects. The contracts the CROs they have with the sites and the local regulators and the practices needed need to be negotiated in order to avoid delays in the start of your trial. And cultural differences, we've experienced this in my companies. Communication with investigators, patient-physician relationships, patient recruitment strategies are all seriously impacted by different practices in those portions of the world and different wars. Language barriers. I think you all will agree principal investigators outside the United States are usually very fluent in English. However, this is not always the case with sub-investigators, study coordinators, and other clinical site staff. Technology considerations. Adoption of new technologies very often varies greatly. For example, the use of e-patient diaries simply isn't everywhere. You have to account for that. Protocol design. Some protocols, and I think you will attest to this, some of these designs do not take into account standard treatments in countries where the study will be performed. For example, if a protocol requires a patient who originally failed in treatment A, and treatment A is simply not available in that country, obviously it will result in low patient recruitment. And translation requirements. A clear understanding of which documents need to be translated to the native language and which documents can be used in English is also important. Just a couple more slides. Other important considerations. Does your CRO have a full-time, board-certified, fellowship-trained physician and consulting physicians, as well as key opinion leaders? Do they have subspecialization in your therapeutic area? Cardiovascular, metabolic, pulmonology, gastro, you get the story. Does the CRO have sophisticated quality management systems with multiple ISO quality management system certifications, specifically for your trial? Had they been audited by the US FDA? Had they had no 483s and no warning letters? And caution, the title of this slide is You Can't Be Good at Everything. Even if you're working with a very large and a multi-service CRO, recall what Dr. Paul Selinsky, a researcher at IMARC Research, pointed out. And I quote, "In the spirit that you can't be good at everything, I believe it's critical to include the organization's specific experience and expertise in the particular clinical/market space where you, the sponsor, operates. Familiarity with the procedural, financial, and practical aspects of a cardio cath lab is dramatically different, for example, than that in the ER or an elective OR or an outpatient clinical setting." So in summary, you want to evaluate your providers, okay, by using common sense. Know that they are indeed your partners, okay, but don't settle for anything less than what you demand have been done at your study. Know that the study and the agreement with the CRO is your pathway, is your map. Establish and monitor against key performance indicators and timelines. Protect and test data integrity throughout the trial. And be prepared when things go wrong, they go sideways, with a plan in place how to mitigate that. Do not assign junior people to the lead, or especially that as primary contact. Keep a close eye on your costs and do not ignore the penalty clauses. And for those with international trials, changes in regulatory environments are happening every day. Be aware of those. Trial logistics, the importance of requirements, regarding the requirements and collection of and management of biological materials. Be aware of all the legal aspects that can delay the process. Language barriers, be cognizant of those, especially the sub-investigators and study coordinators and staff. And note the cultural differences, which may seriously impact your study. So with that, I appreciate you taking your valuable time to listen to my presentation. I can be reached anytime simply at my name at gmail.com, Terrence Tormey at Gmail. And thank you for this opportunity.